For the first time in what felt like years, Changho woke without tension in his chest. No patrol reports waiting in the back of his mind. No rival scents clinging to the edge of his territory. No restless wolf clawing beneath his skin, demanding movement, demanding blood, demanding answers. For the first time, Kazryn was quiet. Not sleeping. Not absent. Content. Changho lay still beneath the weight of the early morning silence, his gaze fixed on the woman sleeping against him like she had always belonged there. And maybe she had. The room was still dark, the first hints of dawn barely touching the edges of the heavy curtains, but he didn't need light to see her. Not anymore. He could feel her. Through the bond. Through the warmth of her body pressed against his side. Through the steady rhythm of her breathing against his chest. Through the soft, slow beat of her heart. Amara was tangled in him in a way that made something deep inside him tighten. One of her legs draped lazily over his. Her hand rested over his heart, fingers curled loosely against his skin like even in sleep, some part of her refused to let him go. Her hair was everywhere. Across his chest. Across the pillow. Across his arm. And God! The sight of her nearly brought him to his knees all over again. Kazryn stirred softly beneath his skin. Not aggressive. Not demanding. Proud. Arluna. Changho's hand moved before he thought about it, his fingers sliding slowly through the silk of her hair, careful not to wake her. Though if he was honest, a part of him wanted her awake. Wanted to hear his name fall from her lips again. Wanted to feel her body arch against his. Wanted. Kazryn rumbled low. She still smells like us. Changho's jaw tightened, not from restraint, but memory. His gaze drifted lower, taking her in slowly, unapologetically. The soft rise and fall of her chest. The faint marks his mouth had left across warm skin the night before. The way she shifted in her sleep, pressing closer instead of drifting away. A slow, dangerous smile touched the corner of his mouth. She's going to wake up sore. Kazryn sounded entirely too satisfied. As she should. Changho exhaled quietly through his nose, his thumb brushing softly over Amara's shoulder as a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the bond. He'd fought it, denied it, buried it, for weeks, and now that he had her, now that Kazryn had her, he couldn't remember why he ever thought resisting her was possible. Amara shifted against him then, letting out the softest sound as her fingers flexed lightly against his chest. Changho went completely still, watching, waiting. Her lashes fluttered once, then again, and slowly. Those dark eyes opened. For a second, she looked disoriented. Soft, sleepy, beautiful enough to make a grown alpha forget his own damn name. Then she looked up at him, and smiled. Not shy, not uncertain, possessive. Why are you staring at me like that? Changho's hand slid slowly down her back, pulling her a little closer, his voice still rough from sleep, and from everything they'd done to each other only hours before. Because I can. Amara's smile deepened, and just before she could answer, Kazryn exploded forward, not in anger, in instinct. Changho's entire body went rigid, his nostrils flared, and suddenly, all the warmth in the room disappeared. Blood. Fresh. Clothes. Not theirs. Kazryn's growl tore through him instantly. Enemy. Amara felt the shift immediately. Her smile vanished. Changho. But he was already moving, already becoming something else. And outside, the first alarm began to howl. The alarm tore through the pack house like a blade. Sharp, relentless, impossible to ignore. By the time the second pulse echoed through the walls, Changho was already off the bed. Every trace of warmth, softness, and sleep disappeared the second his feet hit the floor. Amara barely had time to sit up before the man who had spent the night wrapped around her became something entirely different. His posture changed first, then his eyes, then the air in the room itself. Changho moved with brutal efficiency, already pulling on dark tactical gear laid across the chair beside the bed, his movements sharp, practiced, automatic. There wasn't a second of hesitation, not one wasted motion. Kazryn surged violently beneath his skin. Blood. Changho's jaw clenched. I smell it. Too close. I know. Amara pushed herself upright, the blanket slipping slightly as her eyes tracked every movement he made. He could feel her watching him, feel her confusion, feel the sudden spike of fear that she wasn't even trying to hide. Not fear of him, Fear for him. That hit harder than he expected. He grabbed his combat blade, sliding it into the sheath at his side before stopping near the door. The mind link clicked on. Chaos poured through. East perimeter breached. 3 down near the south ridge. Movement inside the outer tree line. Multiple scents. Changho's voice cut through all of it like a gunshot. Quiet. Silence. Immediate. Absolute. Even through the mind link. They obeyed. Changho's voice dropped lower, darker, sharper than Amara had ever heard it. Han. Then. Already moving. Han's voice came through, breathless but focused. 8 confirmed. Maybe more. Jisoo. Her voice came next. Steady. Cold. West Patrol engaged. 2 wounded. No fatalities. Changho's eyes darkened. Keep it that way. Yes, Alpha. He closed the mind link. And turned. Amara was standing now. Still wrapped in his shirt. Still carrying his scent. Still looking at him like she was trying to reconcile the man from hours ago with the one standing in front of her now. Changho crossed the room in 2 strides. Not gently. Not harshly. Purposefully. His hands gripped her waist, pulling her flush against him for one hard second before his forehead pressed briefly to hers. Not romance. Not softness. Need. Listen to me. Amara swallowed hard but nodded. Changho's voice dropped lower. More dangerous. No matter what you hear. His grip tightened slightly. No matter what you smell. His eyes locked on hers. No matter who screams. Kazryn surged through him. She stays alive. Changho's voice dropped to something almost primal. You do not leave this room. Amara's jaw tightened immediately. And he felt it. Through the bond. Resistance. Of course. Kazryn growled. She's going to fight you. Changho almost smiled. Almost. A pounding hit the door. Hard. Han's voice came through. Alpha, we're out of time. Changho's entire body shifted. His eyes flashed. His muscles tightened. Amara felt it. All of it. The monster. The alpha. The wolf. And for the first time, she understood exactly why an entire pack would die for him. Changho's hand moved to her jaw one last time, his thumb brushing once across her skin before he leaned in close enough that only she could hear him. If anyone gets to bleed for you. His eyes burned into hers. It's me. Then he was gone. The door slammed shut behind him. And outside, all hell broke loose.
Amara's POV. The second the door slammed behind Changho, Amara stood frozen in the middle of his room. Her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through her ribs. She could still feel his hands on her. Still smell him on her skin. Still feel the weight of his forehead against hers when he told her not to leave. And for one stupid, dangerous second, she almost listened. Then the first howl ripped through the pack house. Deep, violent, close enough to shake something inside her she still didn't fully understand. Amara turned toward the door, her breathing uneven now as the sounds outside intensified. Boots pounding across hardwood floors. Voices shouting. Metal clashing. Wolves howling somewhere beyond the walls. And underneath all of it, Changho. She felt him. Not physically. Not through touch. Through the bond. Her hand instinctively pressed against her chest as something hot and primal moved through her. Rage. Focus. Violence. Protection. Her breath caught. That wasn't her. And before she could process that, she heard him. East side. Move now. Amara's eyes widened. She spun around the room. Nobody. Her pulse jumped. Then another voice. Han. Sharp. Focused. Closer somehow. 3 incoming. South tree line. Amara's mouth parted slightly. What the hell? Jisoo's voice came next. Cold. Precise. 1 wounded. Still breathing. Amara's back hit the wall behind her. Her breathing had gone shallow now, her mind racing as she turned in another slow circle. Still no one. Still just her. Then, Changho again. Only this time, she didn't hear it with her ears. She felt it. Hold the damn line. The force behind it hit her like a physical shove, carrying authority so absolute it made her entire body react. And suddenly, it clicked. Her hand moved slowly from her chest to her mouth. Oh my God! She wasn't hearing voices. She was hearing them. All of them. Pack. Through him. Through the bond. Through whatever the hell they had become last night. Kazryn's growl rolled through her next, deep and primal enough to make her knees almost buckle. She hears us. Amara sucked in a sharp breath. Nope. She shook her head once. Then again. No, no, no. But even as the words left her mouth, her body knew. Her heart knew. Her soul knew. This was real. And then, pain. Changho's pain. It hit her so suddenly she doubled over, her hand gripping the edge of the desk beside her as a sharp burn tore through her side. Not enough to injure. Enough to feel. Enough to know. Changho. Her voice cracked. And with it, everything changed. Fear disappeared. Because suddenly, this wasn't about wolves. Or bonds. Or hearing voices in her damn head. This was about him bleeding. And Amara realized something terrifying. Something powerful. Something that made her blood run hot. She wasn't scared. She was furious. Her eyes lifted slowly toward the locked door. And this time, when she looked at it, she wasn't looking for a way out. She was looking for a way in. The iron lamp near the desk caught her eye. A slow smile touched her lips. Okay, Changho. She wrapped both hands around it. You can yell at me later. And then, she swung. The broken lock hadn't even stopped spinning across the hardwood floor before Amara stepped into the hallway. Her pulse was still racing from what she had just done. But it wasn't fear driving her anymore. It was adrenaline. It was fury. It was the bond feeding her flashes of the battle unfolding outside those walls, and the terrifying realization that somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, she could hear them. Not with her ears. Not the way humans were supposed to hear anything. She heard them the way she felt Changho. Inside. Through the bond. Through whatever had changed between them during the night. As she moved down the hallway, her grip tightened around the iron lamp still hanging at her side. Every few seconds another pulse of emotion moved through her. Sharp commands, rising aggression, the sting of fresh injuries, wolves calling to each other across the territory. And beneath all of it, stronger than anything else, she felt Changho. She felt his focus. She felt the cold precision behind every decision he made. She felt the rage of a male who had stopped holding anything back. And then, she felt his pain. It hit her so suddenly she had to brace herself against the wall. A sharp burn tore through her side, just enough to steal her breath for half a second before disappearing as quickly as it came. Amara sucked in a breath and pressed a hand against her ribs. Changho. The name barely left her lips before heavy footsteps thundered down the corridor. She turned just as Jisoo rounded the corner. Dressed head to toe in combat gear with blood streaked across one side of her face and a blade strapped high against her thigh. Her dark eyes moved from Amara, to the shattered lock behind her, to the iron lamp still hanging in her hand. Jisoo stopped. Then slowly, a smirk touched the corner of her mouth. Well, she said, her voice calm despite the war raging outside. That lasted longer than I expected. Amara let out a shaky breath that sounded dangerously close to a laugh. He locked me in. Jisoo's smirk deepened. Yes, he did. Before either of them could say more, Han came around the corner at full speed, blade in one hand, blood staining the front of his shirt. He looked ready to cut through whoever stood in his way, until he saw Amara. Then his eyes dropped to the broken lock. Then the lamp. And then, he grinned. You broke the damn door. Amara dropped the lamp with a loud metallic clang and crossed her arms, still breathing hard. He can yell at me later. Han looked entirely too entertained by that. Oh, he's definitely gonna. He stopped talking the second he saw the look on her face. Because whatever he had expected to see, it wasn't this. Amara's hand moved back to her chest, her fingers pressing lightly against the place where the bond kept pulsing. Her eyes moved between both of them. I can hear you. That wiped the grin off Han's face instantly. Jisoo's smirk disappeared with it. Amara swallowed hard, still trying to make sense of what was happening inside her. I heard Changho giving orders before he even left the room. I heard both of you before you got anywhere near this hallway. And a minute ago, her voice dropped slightly. I felt him bleed. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't awkward. It was heavy, real. Han and Jisoo exchanged one quick look. Years of shared history moving between them without a single word. Then Jisoo stepped closer. Not like she was looking at a human. Not like she was looking at an outsider. Like she was studying something important. When did it start? Amara shook her head slowly. About 30 seconds before I destroyed his door. Han let out a low whistle. Well, that's new. Jisoo's gaze never left Amara. No, she said quietly. It's not. Her eyes sharpened. It's Luna. The word landed differently this time. Heavier. More real. And for the first time, Amara didn't flinch when she heard it. She didn't look away. She didn't deny it. Instead, she took one step forward and met Jisu's gaze head-on. Then stop looking at me like I'm something that needs to be hidden. Han's eyebrows shot up. Jisu didn't smile, but something in her expression changed. Approval. Respect. Recognition. Without another word, Jisu reached behind her back, pulled a blade free, and placed it handle first into Amara's hand. The steel felt cold. Heavy. Terrifying. And somehow. Right. If you walk out there, Jisu said, her voice lower now, more serious than before, you don't walk out as Changho's responsibility. Her eyes locked onto Amara's. You walk out as the woman who will one day stand beside him. Amara tightened her grip on the blade and turned toward the distant sounds of battle, toward the pain she could still feel through the bond, toward the man whose blood had become her problem the second she gave him her heart. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she smiled, not because she wasn't afraid, but because fear had finally stopped mattering. Then let's go find my alpha.
Changho's POV. By the time Changho reached the southern edge of the training grounds, the smell of blood had already soaked into the earth. Mud clung to his boots. The night air was thick with sweat, iron, pine, and death, and everywhere he looked, wolves were fighting to hold the line. Some stayed in human form, blades flashing through the darkness as they moved between trees and open ground. Others had fully shifted, massive bodies colliding with enough force to shake the forest floor as snarls and howls ripped through the night. And at the center of all of it, Changho was exactly where he was built to be. Kazryn moved through him like wildfire, every instinct sharpened, every sense fully awake. Changho didn't have to think anymore. He simply moved, letting years of training, leadership, and brutal experience guide every strike. The first rogue came at him from the left. Changho caught him by the throat before the male's feet fully left the ground, drove him backward into a tree hard enough to split bark, and ended him before he had the chance to scream. The body hit the ground. Changho was already moving. Another came from behind. Kazryn caught the scent half a second before the attack. Changho spun low, drove his blade upward beneath the rogue's ribs, twisted, and pulled free without breaking stride. Blood sprayed across his forearm, across his chest, across his jaw. He didn't even notice. Two more. Kazryn's voice moved through him like thunder. I smell them. Changho didn't slow. He crossed the clearing at full speed, intercepting another rogue before the male could reach one of his younger wolves. The impact sent both of them crashing through wet grass, but Changho was already on top of him, finishing the fight before the rogue ever realized he'd lost. When Changho rose again, his chest was heaving, his blade dripping, and his eyes moved across the battlefield with the precision of an alpha who was tracking every movement at once. He was counting wolves, tracking injuries, adjusting formations, making sure his people stayed alive. And then, he caught a scent that didn't belong. Not enemy. Not pack. Not here. His entire body went rigid. Kazryn surged so hard it nearly knocked the breath out of him. No! Changho turned toward the eastern tree line, and saw her. Amara. She was running straight through his battlefield between Han and Jisu, her dark hair wild from the wind, dirt streaked across her skin, a blade clenched tightly in her hand like she'd been born holding one. She wasn't hiding behind them. She wasn't hesitating. She wasn't scared. She was moving with purpose, with focus, with fire. And for one dangerous, completely irrational second, Changho forgot there was a war happening around him. Kazryn practically roared. She's here. Changho's heart slammed against his ribs, so hard it felt like a physical blow. Not because she looked weak. Not because she looked lost. Because she looked like she belonged there. And that terrified him more than anything. The bond surged between them the second her eyes found his. He felt her adrenaline, her determination, her anger, her need to reach him, and mixed into all of it, something warmer, something that hit him right in the chest. Mine. Changho started moving before he even realized his feet had left the ground. Every wolf within range felt the force of his voice before they heard the words. Han! The command cracked through the battlefield like thunder. Wolves on both sides looked up. Even the fighting around them shifted for half a second. Han turned, blade still in hand, and the second he saw Changho charging toward them, his expression changed. Not fear. Not exactly. but definitely guilt. Changho stopped in front of them with enough force to send mud splashing around his boots, his chest rising and falling as his glowing eyes moved from Han to Jisoo, to the woman standing between them, alive, armed, and looking entirely too pleased with herself. Changho pointed directly at Han. "What the hell did you do?" Han immediately pointed at Jisoo. Without hesitation, she broke the damn door. Jisoo didn't even blink. She used a lamp. Changho looked at both of them like he was deciding who to kill first. Then, Amara smiled at him. Not apologetic, not nervous, not even remotely sorry. Possessive, hot, completely unbothered. And just like that, the most dangerous alpha in the forest forgot how to breathe. Kazryn's growl rolled through him, deep and satisfied. Arluna. And Changho realized the battlefield hadn't just gotten more dangerous for her. It had gotten more dangerous for anyone stupid enough to stand between them. Changho was still trying to decide whether he was going to throw Han through a tree for bringing Amara onto his battlefield when a scent hit him hard enough to stop that thought cold. He recognized it instantly, not because he wanted to, because some things buried themselves too deep to ever be forgotten. The smell of pine, steel, blood, and old hatred moved through the clearing with the night air, and the second it reached him, every muscle in Changho's body tightened. Amara felt it through the bond before she even understood what caused it. Han noticed it immediately. So did Jisoo. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. They had all felt their alpha change before. But not like this. Changho's eyes moved toward the northern tree line, and the chaos of the battlefield seemed to fade into the background as memory pushed its way to the surface. He remembered training beside him. He remembered hunting beside him. He remembered trusting him. And he remembered the night all of that died. Kazryn stirred beneath his skin, not with anger this time, but with something older. Something darker. He came back. Changho's grip tightened around the handle of his blade as movement shifted near the tree line. Branches moved. Leaves trembled. Then a figure stepped out of the shadows and into the moonlight like he had every right to be there. Baehoon hadn't changed in the ways that mattered. He still carried himself like a male who believed the world owed him something. His tactical gear was stained with blood that clearly didn't belong to him, and the expression on his face made it obvious he wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to send a message. And judging by the smile that slowly spread across his face when he saw Changho, he believed he already had. "Well," Baehoon called across the clearing, his voice carrying over the sounds of fighting around them. "I was starting to wonder if you'd gotten soft." Changho didn't answer right away. He took one slow step forward, mud shifting beneath his boots as his eyes locked onto the male who had once been closer than a brother. When he finally spoke, his voice was low enough to make even his own wolves stop moving. "You crossed my borders. Another step. You spilled my blood. Another. And now you're standing in my forest." Baehoon's smile only widened. Still territorial. Han shifted beside Amara, blade ready. Jisoo moved half a step closer, her eyes moving between the two alphas as if she were already calculating how many wolves were about to die. Amara stayed where she was, but the bond in her chest had started pulsing harder with every step Changho took. She didn't just feel his anger. She felt the history behind it. She felt betrayal, loss, rage that had been waiting years for a target. And then, Baehoon's eyes moved. Not toward Han. Not toward Jisoo. Toward her. Amara felt it the same second Changho did. Baehoon studied her openly, his gaze moving over her in a way that made Kazryn explode inside Changho's chest. Not with jealousy. With ownership. With violence. With the primal certainty that the female standing behind his beta and gamma belonged to them. Baehoon tilted his head slightly as he looked at her, and when he spoke again, the amusement in his voice had changed into something far more dangerous. "So that's her." Changho stopped walking. Not because he was calm. Because if he took another step without control, he was going to rip the male apart before his pack had time to blink. The bond surged so hard between him and Amara that her hand instinctively moved to her chest. She felt Kazryn. She felt Changho. And she felt exactly how close both of them were to losing control. When Changho lifted his blade, the moonlight caught the blood still dripping from the steel, and every wolf in the clearing went silent. "If you say another word about her," Changho said, his voice carrying across the battlefield with deadly calm, "I won't leave enough of you for your pack to bury." For the first time since stepping into the clearing, Baehoon stopped smiling, and everyone standing there understood the same thing at once. This wasn't about territory anymore. This wasn't even about old betrayal. This had become personal. And personal was where alphas became monsters. The second Behoon's expression changed, Changho knew the male had stopped playing games. He didn't need Kazryn to confirm it. He saw it in the way two rogues near the eastern ridge shifted position at the same time. He saw it in the way Behoon's attention never left Amara, even while speaking to him. And he saw it in the subtle confidence of a male who believed the next move had already been won. Changho turned toward Amara immediately. The bond between them tightened so hard it felt like a rope being pulled through his chest, and when he pushed the command through their connection, he didn't bother speaking it aloud. Move. He felt her hear him. He felt her body react. He felt her start to turn. And then the battlefield disappeared behind a wall of smoke. The explosion hit the eastern ridge with enough force to shake the trees, throwing dirt, ash, and splintered bark into the air as wolves on both sides lost visibility. Shouting erupted across the clearing. Pack members started calling to one another through the bond. Han's voice cut through the chaos first. Jisu's followed. Changho heard both of them, but he couldn't feel Amara. And that, more than the smoke, the blood, or the enemy, made something inside him snap. Amara. This time the name left his mouth. Not as an order. Not as a command. As a warning to anyone who had touched what belonged to him. The first rogue came out of the smoke with a blade raised high. Changho didn't slow down long enough to draw his own. He caught the male by the throat, drove him backward into the trunk of an old pine, and kept his hand there until the struggling stopped. The body dropped. Changho was already moving. Kazryn surged through him so hard it blurred the line between man and wolf. She's gone. No. Changho's voice came out rougher now, less human than before. They're still here. Another rogue lunged from his blind side. Changho turned, intercepted the strike with his forearm, and buried his blade so deep into the male's chest that the momentum lifted him clear off his feet. When he pulled the blade free, he didn't wait for the body to fall before moving again. He followed scent. He followed fear. He followed blood. And everywhere he went, rogues started breaking formation. Not because they had been ordered to, because they had realized too late who they were fighting. Han caught sight of him first. Even from across the clearing, Changho saw the shift in his beta's expression. Han wasn't afraid, but he was smart enough to move his own wolves out of Changho's path. Jisu did the same. No one tried to stop him. No one tried to calm him down, because every wolf in that clearing knew the same thing. Changho wasn't leading the hunt anymore. Kazryn was. The next rogue tried to run. Changho caught him before he made it 5 steps. He slammed the male into the ground hard enough to knock the weapon from his hand, dragged him back through mud and blood, and lifted him by the front of his tactical vest until their faces were inches apart. Where is she? The rogue tried to lie. Changho broke 2 of his fingers before the first word fully left the male's mouth. Where? This time the male tried to scream. Changho didn't care. He tightened his grip until the rogue started choking on his own breath. Then, the bond hit him. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was Amara. Clear. Sharp. Terrified. Changho froze. His grip tightened without him realizing it, and the rogue in his hand started gasping for air as Changho's focus disappeared from the battlefield entirely. All he could feel was her heartbeat, her panic, her desperate need to reach him. And then, he heard her. Not with his ears. Through the bond. Through the same connection that had brought them together. Through the same connection that had made her his. Changho. It wasn't a scream. It was worse. It was fear wrapped around his name. And it ended so suddenly that Changho's entire body locked in place. Because after that, there was nothing. No heartbeat. No emotion. No bond. No Amara. The rogue in Changho's hand was still talking. Still begging. Still breathing. Changho didn't even realize he had crushed the male's throat until the body went limp. He let it fall. Slowly. Silently. Then Kazryn rose fully. Not beside him. Not beneath him. Through him. And when his wolf's voice rolled through the clearing, every living thing within earshot went still. The pack. Rogues. Even Behoon. They took our Luna. And for the first time that night, Changho stopped looking like an alpha, and started looking like extinction.